continue on with what you're doing. We'll continue the meeting, but if at any time we feel that you are again acting inappropriately, we will ask you to be removed. Do you understand that? Answer me. Do you understand that?
Well, I'm sorry, I wasn't listening.
Would you like to come before us now with your complaint?
Beg your
Do
pardon?
you understand that?
I'm sorry, could you speak up?
Then maybe you should sit closer.
We're confusing you?
There was a question. What was the question? I'm sorry, I was looking at this.
Maybe you should rewind your tape and see what the question was.
I'm just here to not interfere at all.
Really? You've done a great job at that. We're here to address your complaint, Mr. Harrington. Would you like to come before us and say what is on your mind?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. My name is Stephen Harrington, longtime resident of Arlington. And what I'd like to do is just talk to you about the situation in Mount Pleasant Cemetery. There's two related problems. The first is that the cemetery is used as a cut-through to avoid the traffic on Chestnut and Mystic Streets. And so the traffic tends to back up along Chestnut and Mystic, and Sachem Ave has no gate. It's one of the few cemeteries that I've seen in Massachusetts that actually has sort of a back door, and it's used primarily as a cut-through. And on any given day, you can see dozens, if not low hundreds, of trips from Sachem Ave and through. And the roads really aren't designed to handle that. You can see, if you go to St. Paul Cemetery in Arlington, Oak Grove in Medford, Lexington, if you go to Westview in Lexington, the road surfaces are very good. And even in this cemetery, if you go over to the sections that aren't used as a cut-through, the roads aren't in bad shape. For instance, in front of this chapel, the roads aren't bad, and the grass comes right up to the road surface. But from the front gate all the way to the back entrance at Sachem Ave, you can see that the road surface is decayed, and that erosion's taking place, there's not proper drainage and what have you. And so the roads really weren't designed to handle, it's not a public way as far as I know. In addition to that, you have a parking issue. Now, going back to your minutes. In 2007, you said how it was a long-standing problem. In 2008, you can look at the overhead shots of the cemetery. There's 18, 20 cars parked in Sachem Ave. 2008, you said it was a problem. 2008, you also complained about people cutting through the cemetery. You had Lieutenant Conroy here stating it's a problem. He advised that maybe you could put up a gate at the bridge, which didn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. That you could just put a gate at Sachem Ave. If you look at 2009, 2010, every year for the past 6 years, at least twice, this body has noted that parking in the cemetery, and it's particularly along Sachem Ave, is a problem. So this isn't a new problem. 2 years ago I came because my family members, I have 7 family members buried along Sachem Avenue, and we had to come for a internment. And there was a ditch because the road surfaces can't handle the heavy equipment. And you're putting, I see that the fire chief is here, and his vehicles weigh 10, 15 tons. And the road surface can't handle it, and it's broken down, and it creates a ditch all along Sachem Ave. And you can see that yourself. You don't need me to show you photographs of that. And you can see that the ditch fills with water, further eroding the surface, and then people park up further onto the grass side, further encroaching upon the graves. It's so bad now that if you go down Sachem Ave on the left, you'll see that all the tree roots are exposed. Those trees are going to fall down. And people have taken to parking even further on the grave sites. I have photographs that I'd be happy to share with you that actually show 2 tires well onto a grave site. I have pictures of tread marks going across grave sites. I noticed that you had fixed at the bottom of the bridge there, where people had made the corner cutting through, also in the same area. I saw that you had placed a berm there this week, but it actually was going over the person's headstone, you know,
There's
the
no
marker,
headstones there.
the marker. And so, you know, it's a really bad practice to allow. Now, we all know that it's municipal employees who are parking in the cemetery. And we know that it's specifically the police and the fire department. And it's their private vehicles. It's not the vehicles that they use for work, for the most part. And it's turned into a parking lot. And this isn't something new. This has been going on for 6 years. And the town manager told me that they plan to do this for at least 2 more years. And so it's not in reaction to some type of construction that's taking place or road work taking place. This has been going on for a long time. And there's plenty of alternatives. And I don't think that this body really cares about the alternatives outside the cemetery, but I really think that you should care about what's occurring inside the cemetery. This is one of the only cemeteries that has no gate at a back door. You could easily, you don't have to spend any money at all. You could put 3 orange barrels, do not enter. You could put sawhorses, do not enter. And that would take care of the problem. You could remove them when you needed to go there for a funeral. It would be easy to do. It's in your control. My understanding is that you're an appointed board. And that as an appointed board, you're on your 100th anniversary of it. Town meeting allowed the selectmen to appoint you in 1913. You're under the supervision and control of the Board of Selectmen, but that doesn't mean you don't have the authority to set regulations in the cemetery. And I want to thank the cemetery workers for putting up curbing and some signs that say no parking except for cemetery business. But unfortunately, without a regulation that isn't enforced, as you see people park right in front of those signs, it's not just people, and it's municipal employees. And it's not the ones just when they're at work. I sat there for one 45-minute period a couple weeks ago, and there's actually contractors who are parking in there with their equipment. There's town employees on their day off who have a contracting business who are parking their vehicles in the cemetery. Anytime you can see 20, 30, I saw 50. And what set me off this time is when I tried to come into the cemetery to meet with a monument person to have a marker or a monument changed for my brother, I couldn't get anywhere near the gravesite because there was so many cars parked. And people have told me repeatedly that they can't even come near where their loved ones are because there's no parking anywhere close. And so I think you have an obligation, and I'd like to understand why you don't put a barrier to stop both the transit through the cemetery, and you don't put a barrier to stop people from parking in there. Thank you.
Is that all you have to say?
Yes.
So I expect answers to my questions when I address them to you. Do you understand me?
To my best ability, I'll try to help out.
So
I
my
wanna
first
help this
question
out.
is that with all of your going to various bodies regarding this issue, why did you not come to us first?
That's the same question you asked me 2 years ago. And
That's right. I asked you 2 years ago that question.
Would you like me to finish the answer?
I'd love it.
So 2 years ago you asked me, and my brother passed away in July.
Mm-hmm.
So this was the anniversary when I tried to get to the gravesite this year. And in July you had just had your meeting, and I didn't even know about the cemetery commission. And what I had done is actually contacted the town manager, figuring that it's his employees, and it is his employees. And so I contacted him, and the Board of Selectmen were meeting the very next Monday, and we were going to inter my brother on the Wednesday. And we didn't want to have to get, between vehicles and have to wade through a pool of water. So I went to the Board of Selectmen. Now this time, the day that I went to the cemetery to pay my respects to my brother on his anniversary, the Board of Selectmen were meeting that night. I went to open meeting and discussed it. There was no discussion back and forth. It was just a notice. And because it's their employees, I feel that they have just as much responsibility. And because they do, the Cemetery Commission and the workers are actually under the control and supervision of the Board of Selectmen, I feel that was appropriate. Do you have an issue with that?
No, I don't have an issue. You can go
Thank
if you
you.
want. I'm just curious as to why you didn't come to the commission first, who has done things about this, but you wouldn't know that because you hadn't come to us first. So I really could have saved you a lot of time. So I'm just wondering, again, why you chose to go that route that was off.
Well, I am here, and I'll be in front of the Board of Selectmen hopefully next Monday.
So state your question again.
Why wouldn't you put a barrier at Sachem Ave? Temporary or
Well, I believe
otherwise?
that when you were here previously, we were extremely responsive to your needs, were we not? I'm asking you a question, were we not?
No, I asked you not to have parking and to put a barrier there when I came in front of you 2
No,
years ago.
what you asked was you wanted some sort of sign, which we did put up, correct? Are there signs there in front of your family's spot?
I think there is. Some of
No,
my
not
family.
you think, you know.
Well, in front of some of my family, I have about 50 relatives buried in the cemetery.
Mm-hmm.
The seven whose sites are being driven over. Yeah, you put up a barrier.
We did.
Yeah.
We responded to your needs at that time, did we not? And unfortunately, Sachem is a very public way, and parking is an issue there. It's unfortunate that your parents chose to buy a spot there, and that this seems to be the result of some of the construction that has been going on that was not going on when you were here previously. Correct?
Actually, I don't know the construction that's been going on. I'm not, in charge of that.
And so what we could have also told you is that with the parking as well, that we had spoken with the police chief and with the fire chief, and that there are some needs that supersede the cemetery, such as when the emergency personnel need to do their trainings, they need to be at the safety building. That's how it is right now. And I would rather have them be able to have access to their vehicles and to be able to come for their trainings as they need to benefit the whole town. And if that means that unfortunately they are parking here in the cemetery for now, then that is how it is. Because the cemetery is right across the street. Unfortunately, the construction's going on. Unfortunately, National Grid is working. This is something that we have all agreed on and have spoken about previously. But you wouldn't know that because you didn't come ask us about that. Nope. You want me to answer you, you're going to let me answer you. Now, when
When did you do that? When did you do that?
When this Arlington Center Fire Station has their construction done, everything, my understanding is, will be moved down to the center. The trainings and however else they're going to work that, and it won't be an issue here. But I think that being cooperative for the benefit of the town right now is much more beneficial and a better thing for us to be doing. Wouldn't you agree? Because if your
Well,
house
they're gonna
was
ask
on-
you- you asked me a
because if
question,
your
so-
house was on fire and if you had a 911 call, wouldn't you want these guys to know what they're supposed to be doing? Because they need to train.
So when
correct?
did you give them permission? Was it you? Was it the board?
We had spoke about this quite some time ago.
Do you have
Actually,
a roughly
I believe
when?
it was sometime, well, around the time that the construction began, whenever that was,
Was
I'm
it-
not sure.
Was it you individually or you?
The
I
board
spoke
as
with
a
the chief
whole, we
about
spoke.
it.
You spoke with the chief yourself. Did you speak with the
I
chief?
spoke with them as well. Gloria was not part of the board at that time.
So you did this, you went to the chief, or the chief came to you and you gave them permission?
We talked about an agreement, about what was going to go on.
Could you tell me the
cemetery has
limit of
been-
that agreement?
The cemetery has been used for other purposes in the past, long before any of us were even born. You may not realize that. But it's always been used for other things. And sometimes that's just what needs to be done for the benefit of the town, not just because one small section of the street has too much parking. And I would disagree with the 50 cars assessment. I would disagree with your promoting that parking goes on all over the cemetery, because it does not. I don't know whether or not all the cars that are parked there are municipal employees. I'm not sure how it is that you seem to know that all those cars are employees. Some of them may be people that have other business into the police station other than being employees. I don't know unless you can.
Do you have
take a
agreements with
license
them as well?
Huh?
Do you have agreements with them? You said you gave the chief of police and the chief of fire, you both personally talked to them and gave them permission to do this. did you also give the
The town manager
contractors?
has also spoken to them.
So you
if
gave the
you
town
can-
manager the ability to let anyone park
I
there?
didn't
don't
give the
give
town,
them
we
the
don't give the
ability.
town manager ability of anything.
So then how are other people allowed to park there? Contractors
I
say.
guess they just come in and do it and then they leave.
Is that, you don't find that a problem?
It's unfortunate that it's an issue right now, but it has not been this much of an issue before the construction, and I'm assuming that once the construction is done, that hopefully it will go away.
Would you put a gate up there?
Not
Or
right
a
now.
barrier
Not right now.
in the future?
Maybe when we do the roads, which is something else that we could tell you, that we have it, that the roads are going to be getting done within 2 years.
I saw in
So-
2007, the 5-year capital plan called for the roads to be done in 2012. In 2008, it was 2012. 2009, it was pushed to
So-
2013. 2010, it
So
was
why
pushed to
don't you ask me
2013.
why- so rather
Every year, it was
than-
pushed out 2 more years. Now it's pushed out
So
to
why don't you ask me
2015.
why?
Were you a town meeting member?
Why don't you ask me why, and I can give you the answer unless you don't want it,
You said that the roads were going to be done.
right? Why
I've shown
why do you
that-
think it got pushed ahead? Think for a minute.
Oh, you're going to say because of the water pipes that are under
Here
the
we go.
street. Now, have those been fixed?
Not,
Have those been
not
replaced?
out in the street, but we are having water work done here in the cemetery. It doesn't make sense to do the roads if the water work is gonna be done, correct? Wouldn't you agree? That would be just a waste of money.
So
wouldn't you agree?
what water work is that? So I noticed a $460,000 appropriation at town meeting this year I voted on that allowed
you.
for the road, for the water to be done. So what water's underneath the street there at Satcham Ave?
What, water?
Yeah, is it a water main
Do you
into the
think
rest of the
there's only
town?
one water pipe?
No, I'm asking under
Full
Satcham Ave
72 acres?
specifically. Under Satcham Ave specifically.
Under Satcham Ave specifically, I would not agree to having them do road work until everything is done in the cemetery first. It doesn't make sense. I think you'd agree to that. The water work.
Well, I'm just
in the
trying to find out
cemetery
what
will be
water
done.
pipes are underneath
I
Satcham
don't know
Ave.
the exact pipe name.
I think we have the director of DPW here. Could he maybe tell us what the
I'm
water
addressing
under the
your
Satcham
question
Ave?
right now. This is not for you to be pulling other people into.
I asked the chair.
And I'm giving you the answer, and I'm telling you, we will not be pulling other people in right now. Understood? Do you understand? Answer me.
I thought it was a rhetorical question. Go ahead.
No, it was not.
So you didn't answer the question,
I
what
did
water
answer
is
the
under there?
question. Well,
So
what am I supposed
Satcham
to
Ave,
say?
Satcham Ave is in very bad shape. And it's because of parking and it's because of using it as a
Heard your
public
concern
way.
about that, yeah.
So you said earlier that you felt that Satcham Ave was a public way.
I said it is a very public way. I didn't say it is. It's right there, right off of Mystic Street.
So Satcham Ave is not a public way. It's under the
This is a
control of the
public
cemetery.
cemetery now. This is not a private cemetery, unlike St. Paul's, which is a private cemetery.
Well,
Or like,
Oak Grove or Westview and Lexington, I also brought those as
so,
public.
right, private cemeteries. This is a public cemetery.
So I went and drove through those other cemeteries
Mm-hmm.
and videotaped, just traversing through them, and they're very good shape, very good
That's
shape.
great.
And ours are not. And it's not because of lack of maintenance. When was the last time you had a capital expenditure on the road surface in the cemetery? Do you know?
We've had road repairs in the cemetery.
A capital expense. When was the last time that because when I look, it's been more than 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
So to use it as a parking lot for,
It's not
as we
used
already,
as a parking
as we already
lot.
know,
The
for more than
cemetery
7
itself
years.
is not used as a parking lot.
For
so
more
please
than
stop
7
saying that.
years, for more than 7 years being used as a
It
parking lot,
hasn't been 7 years.
and for it to be used as a throughway, as a cut-through, that's really damaged the roads much more than any other cemetery.
It's a huge cemetery.
yeah.
People cut through.
Westview and Oak Grove's a huge cemetery.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of people in Oak Grove, to visit. And
Obviously.
there's no way to go through. If you go in, all those cemeteries have one thing in common. You go in one way and you come out the same way.
Mm-hmm.
There's gates that are closed generally on all of those cemeteries in the back.
Mm-hmm.
There's no easy way to, and it's certainly not used as a cut-through.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll agree that Mount Pleasant's being used as a cut-through.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes it does. And I think you've probably used it as a cut through too.
I beg your pardon?
I said, I'm sure you've probably used it as a cut through yourself.
You know something? I am very conscious of it, and I'm very careful not to use it as a cut-through. I've come in here for cemetery business. Now, having grown up in here, I'm sure that I did things years ago. Statute of limitations have passed. But I think that you have your control, you can put up a barrier. It doesn't have to be permanent. It doesn't have to be expensive. You can easily stop this issue immediately.
Well, we
And I'm
thank
just
you for
asking
that
why you wouldn't do
suggestion.
that.
We
I'm
thank you
asking
for
why
that
you wouldn't do
suggestion.
that.
We're
Take it
not,
under advisement.
we're not inclined to do that at this time.
Okay. Thank you very much.